can we increase diversity in our profession, in our firms, and in our workplace? Today, three impressive lawyers, who are also friends from whom I've learned so much, offer practical recommendations for how to diversify the trust and estate profession. Vanessa Brown of Bessemer Trust, ACTEC Fellow Stephanie Perry of Pasternak and Fittis, and Kalima White of TD Wealth Management describe their experiences, offer steps for creating a pipeline program, suggest ideas for how to improve recruitment and retention, describe the difference between serving as a mentor and serving as a sponsor, and so much more. The lively discussion is moderated by ACTEC Fellow Sarah Moore Johnson of Birchstone Moore and is well worth 20 minutes of your time.
Today, we're going to briefly touch on why diversity in the estate planning profession is so important, and we will hear from three trailblazing women on how and why they chose estate planning as a career, and what we can do to encourage students and professionals of color to join the estate planning industry. The American Bar Association reports that in 2020, white men, and to a lesser extent, white women, remain overrepresented in the legal profession compared to their presence in the overall US population. While the percentage of female lawyers has increased slowly over the past decade to a whopping 37%, there have been little to no gains among people of color. While over 13% of Americans are Black, only 5% of all lawyers are Black. Similarly, Latinx make up 18.5% of the US population, but only 5% of lawyers. Asians represent 6% of the US population and 2% of lawyers. These statistics are even more dramatic in the estate planning profession. Our very own American College of Trust and Estate Counsel was incorporated in 1949, but did not admit its first Black fellow until Terry Franklin joined in 2001. Today, there are 2,500 ACTEC fellows, and only 4 of them are Black. Lack of representation in our profession is one factor behind the ever-growing racial wealth gap. Rochelle Riley and Stephanie Perry expand on this topic in their ACTEC video on economic inequality in America. In every indicator of economic success, from net worth to homeownership to credit scores, the Latinx population slightly outperforms the African American population, but both are dramatically worse off than whites. When it comes to our bailiwick, inheritance, white families are 3 times more likely than families of color to benefit from lifetime gifts and bequests at death. Some researchers say that this discrepancy in inherited wealth accounts for more of the racial wealth gap than any other factor. Inheritance is, after all, the end result of centuries of racist policies in our country. When you think of racial justice careers in the law, you may immediately think of litigators or civil rights attorneys, but estate planners are uniquely positioned to tackle economic inequality. The simple act of preparing a will for a family of color or encouraging an investment in life insurance can create tangible economic gains that will help close the wealth gap. The more Black and brown estate planning attorneys that we have, the more likely are families of color to seek legal representation and create a plan for intergenerational wealth transfer. So how do we go about convincing law students of color to seek out and remain in careers in estate planning? ACTEC is leading in this area through its program of student outreach to historically Black universities. In February of 2021, our panel spoke to about 70 law students at Howard University and the University of the District of Columbia. With me today for a repeat performance are Stephanie Perry, who is managing partner at a boutique estate planning firm in Maryland and one of the first Black members of ACTEC. We also have Kalima White, who is Vice President and Senior Trust Advisor in TD Bank's Private Client Group in Wilmington, Delaware, and Vanessa Brown, a Vice President and Trust Officer at Bessemer Trust, one of the nation's premier private trust companies. Could each of you take a minute to tell us what led you to a career in trust and estates? Kalima, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate it. I like to say that the trust and estates world found me. I started out my career as a litigator, and I really, when I went to law school, I thought I was going to be a litigator for my life, fighting in courtrooms. And then I just realized it wasn't the type of law I wanted to do because it really didn't, touch my soul the way that, now Trust and Estates does. And so I was really, blessed to be able to move in my law firm that I was practicing in, move into the Trust and Estates department and, and start my Trust and Estates practice there. And, for the last 25 years, I've been, enjoying this wonderful practice.
And Stephanie, how about you?
So I was introduced to estates and trust law as a law student. When I started law school, I wasn't familiar with estates and trust law. I just hadn't been exposed to the area. It was my second year of law school when I took an estates and trust course, and that was my introduction. During my second summer and all throughout my third year, I clerked for a probate court judge, and that was my introduction to the administration side of the practice. So I just happened to take a trust and estates course and ended up falling in love with the subject matter. And many years later, this is all I've ever done.
Vanessa, your path started out in litigation. How did you get here?
Well, even before I was a litigator or a law student, I was a terrified political science major, not sure what I was going to do. I wanted to go to law school, but I did not know any attorneys. The ones on TV all seemed to be so different than me. They seemed to enjoy being loud and pounding their fists on the table, and that just wasn't my personality. I had the opportunity to take a gap year where I worked under an attorney at a nonprofit organization, and she helped show me that there is space for all different types of people in the legal profession. From there, I got an opportunity to clerk in law school at a law firm in their fiduciary litigation department. And I learned more about trust and estates. And I learned that there is room for all different types of people within the trust and estates profession. You can be an estate planner, you can be a fiduciary litigator, an estate administrator, or like myself, a trust administrator. So I am very grateful to be part of a profession that is so inclusive.
And we are so glad that each of you is in this profession. So let's talk about how we can get more people like you in this profession. What are some suggestions for how we can recruit attorneys and students of color to join the estate planning profession? Vanessa, why don't you start us off?
Sure. We talk a lot about pipeline programs, and you'll hear some of my other panelists talk about some great pipeline programs that are already set up. But sometimes we live in areas where pipeline programs aren't readily available to us. When I started practicing law as a fiduciary litigator, I was living in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was not aware of a pipeline program at the time in that area. So I got together with a partner and some other associates, and we put together our own pipeline program. It was a little ambitious, but I'm here to tell you that it is completely doable. We made connections with the local law schools and organized a group of lawyers within our firm to spend a Saturday morning reviewing resumes in person and conducting mock interviews. So the workshop itself ended up having two benefits. One, it benefited the students by giving them exposure to the law firm environment, what it's like to be in the building, what it's like to interact with people who work at a law firm and hear criticism and the expectations of what it means to work at a law firm. And then the second part was it was also beneficial to the attorneys. It gave the attorneys exposure to law students that don't necessarily look like them and help them build that relationship with them.
Great. And I know Kalima has, or I'm going to go to Stephanie next. And Stephanie, you have some ideas for us about ways we can interact with students.
Right. One of the really simple things that you can think about doing when you're recruiting in this space is to visit with local affinity bars of lawyers and law students. In most every jurisdiction, there are affinity bars of practicing lawyers. African American bars, Asian bars, Hispanic, Latinx bars, and the list goes on. These organizations obviously are open to everyone. And if we want ideas about how to make our spaces more diverse and inclusive, I think we should go directly to the source and visit with these bars, find out what's important to the members and how we can create environments within our firms and our organizations that feel inclusive and promote diversity. Also, cultivate relationships with affinity bars at local law schools where you're focusing your recruiting efforts. Plan programs specifically for these minority bar student associations to introduce those students to your firm and show them your commitment to diversity efforts so that when they are thinking about where they would like to land after law school, your firm or your organization is at the top of their list.
And Stephanie, you make an important point about the fact that this is not just outreach to students, which you touched on last, but your first point was reaching out to professionals that are already practicing lawyers who may want to become estate planning attorneys. And that's an important one. Khalima, you have some good advice for all of us on expanding our personal networks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I really do think that it's important for us to expand our personal networks in the sense of, having our, personal life be diverse and full of diverse people. I think it makes us better humans. I think it makes us more comfortable with the people that we are, recommending for positions. In my adult professional career, I've really never had a job opportunity that was not, through some recommendation from someone who knew me personally. And, and I try to do that as well when I'm, mentoring other young professionals. And so, if we know more people who are diverse, then we're going to, of course, naturally be in a position to be able to, to recommend them because we know what their work ethic is, right? We know exactly how they're going to act and behave in certain settings. And so I do think it's very important for us, if we expand our personal networks and know more people of, of diverse cultures and backgrounds, then it definitely will help us, recruit some diverse people within our industry.
And you're right that we do have to be really intentional about this. And one of the ways that I've tried to put this into practice is to hire a diverse intern each semester who helps me with my email. That's my biggest problem as an attorney, is keeping track of my email. And their job is to review my email throughout the day. And at the end of the day, tell me the top 5 things that I need to respond to that night. And it's a way that doesn't require a whole lot of background and training on their part, but gives them a broad exposure to our profession. And I've often struggled with, where do I find these students of color? And I've gone to babysitter listservs and reached out to my friends who are of color and tried to see, who can I broaden my network and reach to hire for these positions. And so that's one takeaway for you. I want us to talk about retention as well. If we've been successful in recruiting attorneys, how do we make sure that they become successful in their career? And each of you has attained an incredible measure of success. So what are your thoughts and suggestions for us on this topic? Stephanie, we'll start with you.
Sure. In looking back at my career, what stands out about my path and what's relevant for purposes of this discussion about retention is the fact that I've had incredible mentors and sponsors throughout my career who didn't look like me, who took a genuine interest in my success and advocated for me in rooms where I wasn't present. And that feeling of being supported and knowing that my success was considered a success for the entire firm, that instilled a sense of loyalty in me. And that's what I think we want to achieve in our retention efforts. We want our attorneys to know that we are invested in their success, and in turn, we have them stay with us long term. I mean, that's what we really want to achieve when we're talking about retention.
And Vanessa, talk to us about, Stephanie touched on mentors who had helped her through her career. Talk to us about sponsorship and mentorship.
Sure. So when I hear the word mentor, I think of the person who is going to be with you on the day to day, helping you learn how to become a better attorney. So learning how to do better research, learning how to draft a better brief, learning how to draft a better contract. They're the ones there that are training you to be a good attorney. Then you have your sponsors, which can be different people. And the sponsors are people you might not see on a daily basis, but they have a general understanding of who you are and the quality of work that you produce. They're typically in a more senior position, and they are able to leverage that on your behalf. So I have benefited greatly from sponsors when I was a fiduciary litigator to now as a fiduciary officer. And what I am continuously struck by is that sponsorship can be very simple, but very efficient. So 2 immediate examples come to mind. One, a managing partner might receive an email from an attorney saying that they just finished working with this junior associate and are so impressed by their work. That is important, especially when it comes time to do a year-end review or when the associate is up for partnership. Another example is having a colleague call your supervisor and informing your supervisor of some extracurricular accomplishment that you received or an award you received that they might not be aware of. And it allows your supervisor to know a little bit more about what you're doing without you actually telling it to them. And also know that that person who called them is invested in your success. The thing with sponsorship is it has to be intentional. So in order to do these things, you have to set aside some time to do it. It doesn't take long, but you do have to set aside that time. And it can be as simple as identifying people who are in your network or in your firm, in your company, and are diverse, reaching out to them, asking, how can I benefit you? What are your goals? How can I help you achieve them? And then setting a plan to send those emails, make those phone calls, nominate somebody for a committee, and following through with it so that you show up for that person in those rooms that that person isn't yet privy to.
That is great advice. And I can attest to the truth in it. In my personal journey in learning more about racial equity and my role in it, what I've come to understand is that creating equity in the workplace may mean that I need to devote more time and energy to the training of our younger attorneys of color. That I can't just assume that because the person has made it into the door of the law firm, that now that there's a level playing field. And so it does take a commitment and work, but it is worthwhile work. And Kallima, I want to close with you and how, what are your views on authenticity? And one of the things that we need to do as employers is making sure that there is space for each of our employees to be their authentic selves.
I think that is so very important, Sarah, because I think that when you can be your authentic self, then you feel comfortable. And when you feel comfortable, just like in any other situation, whether it's professional or personal, you want to stay, right? And so if we want to retain, attorneys of color and, and a diverse population, then we have to let people be themselves. And on top of it, the people, when you're doing it, you're being yourself, make sure that yourself is shiny. Make sure that you are, working hard, that you are, someone that, someone wants to keep you around. And so it's sort of a give and take type of relationship. But, you work hard, you be shiny, and then people will definitely come. But I do think it's very important, for people to understand that, having the people feel comfortable and being themselves and being authentic is most important to retention.
Well, this has been a really inspiring talk. I hope that those of you who are watching it have gotten some ideas for how you might improve your own recruiting and retention. And I just want to thank each of our panelists. We're so grateful for each of you being here today and sharing these kernels of wisdom with us. Thank you very much.
Wasn't that outstanding? The panel lays out for us how to get started diversifying our firms and the trust and estate field. Personally, I find mentoring and sponsoring young lawyers from diverse backgrounds exceptionally rewarding. Mentoring allows you to leverage your experience, elevating both the mentor and the mentee to levels neither could achieve alone. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Pick just one of their suggestions and focus on that today. Please visit actec, actec.org/diversity for resources on increasing diversity in the legal profession. And make sure you subscribe to ACTEC's YouTube channel to be informed of new videos as they become available.